In the year 2231, Earth sat on the edge of history, its place in the stars uncertain, as the message arrived from the Galactic Council, a massive network of advanced species that had governed the galaxy for millennia. The message was clear: Earth had been observed for centuries, its development carefully monitored. As it reached the cusp of becoming a galactic power, the Council was offering Earth a chance to join them, a place among the stars in exchange for submission to their rules and regulations. The offer was tempting, a path to advanced technology, peace, and prosperity. But there was a cost. Earth would no longer be able to decide its own future. Its leaders would no longer have the power to govern freely. Earth would be bound by the Council's laws, and those laws were strict. They would control Earth's expansion, its military, its politics, and even its cultural development. The idea of joining the Council was met with mixed reactions from the people of Earth. Some saw it as a golden opportunity to advance and avoid the constant struggles of survival. Others saw it as a form of slavery, a chain that would hold them back from achieving their true potential. The decision reached the highest levels of government and then spread down to the people who had been kept in the dark about the Council's true nature for so long. The negotiations began under the watchful eye of the global leaders, who knew that rejecting the Council would come at a steep price, and yet the very idea of handing over their freedom was met with resistance. There were murmurs of revolt hidden beneath the surface, a growing sense that Earth should not be bound by anyone's rules, that the species that had risen from the ashes of destruction time and time again should not bow to anyone. The rejection was inevitable. When the moment arrived, the people of Earth rose as one in defiance. Their leaders, speaking in unison, rejected the offer. The message was broadcast to every corner of the world: Earth would not bend to the will of the Council. They would stand on their own or fall trying. The leaders of Earth knew what this would mean. They knew the Council would not let this act of defiance go unanswered. But the message was loud and clear: Earth had made its choice. The Galactic Council might have the power to influence the fates of billions of species, but it would never control Earth. Not now, not ever. The announcement echoed across the globe and beyond, even the furthest reaches of the galaxy, where the Council had its spies and agents listening. When the Council received word of Earth's decision, the reaction was swift, cold, and calculating. Earth was now a rogue planet, a world that had rejected the wisdom of the galaxy and the promise of peace and prosperity. The Council's leaders gathered in their chambers, their voices low as they discussed the ramifications of this rejection. They would have to show Earth the consequences of defying them. It was unthinkable to them that a planet so young and so untested would reject their offer. They would make an example of Earth. But the Council underestimated one thing: humanity's willpower and the power of the collective spirit. When Earth stood united in defiance, it proved that nothing could break their resolve, and nothing would ever force them into submission. The story of Earth was only beginning, and the consequences of its defiance would send shockwaves through the galaxy. The moment Earth's rejection of the Council's offer was broadcast across the galaxy, the consequences came quickly and without mercy. The first blow came in the form of a brutal embargo. The Council's ships moved into position around Earth's orbit, cutting off essential trade routes and blocking vital supplies that Earth depended on to maintain its infrastructure. The once bustling spaceports now sat silent as ships from distant planets were turned away by the Council's enforcers. The price of defiance was becoming clear. Earth's economy, which had only begun to stabilize, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Goods became scarce, and the cost of basic resources skyrocketed. Earth's governments scrambled to find solutions. The people of Earth could feel the pressure mounting in every aspect of their lives. The standard of living began to plummet, and as the shortages worsened, so did the sense of fear and uncertainty that gripped the planet's cities that had once been symbols of human achievement were now filled with angry protests and anxious crowds. The weight of the Council's retaliation was felt most acutely by the working class, the poor, and the vulnerable, those who had the least to lose in a world that now seemed to be falling apart. But the citizens of Earth were not easily broken. Despite the hardships they faced, a quiet rebellion began to take root in the shadows of every major city. Engineers, scientists, and ordinary citizens who had grown tired of being controlled began to work together in secret, sharing ideas and developing technologies that would allow Earth to stand on its own. The embers of defiance turned into a spark as whispers of new technologies spread through the underground networks. Humanity had learned to innovate under pressure, and in times of crisis their creativity bloomed in ways the Council had never anticipated. What had once been a world on the brink of collapse was now becoming a crucible for innovation. Earth's engineers began to repurpose existing technologies. With startling efficiency, they discovered new sources of energy hidden beneath the surface of the planet, and new ways to manufacture materials that were previously thought to be unobtainable. Earth's industrial machines began to hum again. Though it was no longer in the service of the old order, it was in the service of something new. And the first signs of this transformation began to appear in space. Earth's fledgling fleet was born not out of luxury or opulence, but out of necessity. The Council's blockade had made it clear that Earth would have to defend itself if it was to survive. Using stolen blueprints from alien ships and salvaged wreckage from previous skirmishes, Earth's engineers built warships that were crude but effective. They were faster than the sleek vessels of the Council and deadlier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first test came sooner than expected as Earth's satellites detected the arrival of the Council's ships from all directions. They had come to remind Earth, who was in control, to teach them the consequences of defiance. The Council was sending an unmistakable message, and yet Earth was no longer the defenseless planet they once were. They had learned to fight in the face of desperation, and they would not go quietly into the void now. The world held its breath as Earth's military forces prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. The time had come for Earth to show the galaxy that it would not bow to the will of the Council, no matter the cost. The first battle was chaotic and raw. Earth's newly formed fleet was nothing like the polished forces of the Galactic Council. Their ships were a patchwork of different technologies, hastily assembled in secret under the watchful eyes of Earth's engineers. But they were fueled by something far greater than mere hardware, the determination of humanity. The moment the Council's ships entered Earth's orbit, they found themselves facing an unexpected opponent. The first shots were fired with crude but devastating accuracy as Earth's ships launched a barrage of makeshift weaponry designed to disable rather than destroy the Council's vessels. Earth's strategy was simple and direct: outmaneuver them, strike fast and hard with everything they had. The battle unfolded in a swirling dance of fire and metal. The massive hulls of the Council's ships towered over the smaller human vessels, but it quickly became clear that speed and unpredictability were Earth's advantages. The humans knew their territory better than any alien fleet. Their warships darted through Earth's rings and asteroid belts, using the environment as cover to strike from unexpected angles. Earth's fleet was outgunned, but it wasn't outsmarted. While the Council had superior firepower, they lacked the same adaptability and resourcefulness Earth had been forced to develop out of necessity. Humanity's engineers had devised a new form of energy that could temporarily disable enemy shields. This breakthrough turned the tide of the battle. When Earth's ships fired their new weapon, it created a wave of shock and confusion among the Council's forces. Their advanced shields flickered and sputtered under the onslaught, leaving them vulnerable to precise strikes that caused massive damage. Council ships began to retreat one by one, but they were not without their pride, and they fought back fiercely. Earth's fleet was outnumbered, but the battle raged on with a ferocity that stunned both sides. Earth's forces fought with the fury of a species that had been pushed to the brink and refused to go down without a fight. Moments of desperation gave birth to unexpected victories as a young commander named Adrian Vega took control of a flagship during the heat of battle. His leadership galvanized the fleet, and his tactics turned what seemed like certain defeat into an overwhelming success. Vega was everywhere on the front lines, barking orders, making split-second decisions that saved countless lives and led to the destruction of several key Council ships. His quick thinking became the turning point of the conflict. The Council had assumed they were dealing with a planet that could be easily crushed. They never anticipated the ingenuity and tenacity of the human spirit. As the last of the Council's ships retreated into deep space, Earth's people erupted into celebration, but it was tempered by the realization of how much they had lost and how far they still had to go. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. Earth had proven that it could fight back and that it was not willing to submit to the will of the Council. But their victory had come at a steep cost. Many lives had been lost, many ships had been destroyed, and the struggle to defend their independence had only just begun. As the dust settled on the battlefield, Earth's leaders knew they had just entered a new phase of the war, one that would test their resolve and their unity to the fullest. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight to redefine their place in the galaxy, a fight that would determine whether Earth would remain free or fall under the shadow of the Council's rule. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's victory was more than just a military success. It was a signal to the galaxy that humanity had evolved beyond its previous limitations. The warships that had once been hastily constructed were now symbols of Earth's resilience and ingenuity. Every ship that returned to port was met with cheers, but also with the quiet understanding that the true cost of freedom was still being paid. The destruction of Earth's infrastructure had been immense, and the rebuilding process was slow. But Earth was a planet forged in adversity, and there was no shortage of people ready to rebuild the planet's engineers and scientists worked around the clock developing new technologies, not just for war, but for peace. Earth had learned quickly from the battle it had fought. The fleet was already being refitted with better shields, new weapons, and faster engines. Humanity no longer feared the unknown, but embraced it. With every failure came new knowledge, and with each success came new hopes for a future beyond the stars. Earth had made its mark, and it was far from done. The moment the Council ships had fled, Earth's leaders began to prepare for what would come next. They had sent a clear message to the Council, but they also understood that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The Council would not simply allow a rogue planet to challenge their power. Without retaliation, Earth's leaders knew the Council would come again. They would come stronger, they would come smarter. But Earth had proven that it was not a planet to be underestimated. As Earth worked to rebuild its shattered cities and bolster its defenses, the rest of the galaxy began to take notice. Whispers of Earth's triumph spread like wildfire to worlds once under the Council's thumb. Other civilizations, who had lived in fear of the Council's dominance, saw Earth's victory as a spark of hope for themselves. It was clear that Earth was no longer a passive observer of galactic events, but an active participant and a force to be reckoned with. Many species began reaching out to Earth in secret, offering alliances, trade agreements, and most importantly, their support. Earth's leaders knew that they could not stand alone in this fight. The strength of their growing fleet was impressive, but the true power lay in the unity of the free worlds. The fight for independence had started on Earth, but it was quickly becoming a struggle for freedom across the galaxy. Adrian Vega, the young commander who had led the charge during the battle above Earth's atmosphere, became a symbol of hope, not just for humanity, but for every world that longed for freedom. His strategic brilliance had earned him the respect of his peers, and his ability to inspire his crew made him a natural leader. In the coming days, Vega's role would become even more critical as Earth began to expand its influence beyond its borders. The first step was securing alliances with nearby systems, many of which had long been under the shadow of the Council's rule. Earth offered them something the Council never had: the promise of freedom, a future where they could determine their own fate. Vega would travel to these systems, not as a conqueror, but as a messenger of hope, promising that together they could build a new galaxy, one where no species would be bound by the will of a distant authority. The future was uncertain and dangerous, but Earth was no longer alone in its fight, and that made all the difference. Earth's people had chosen to fight for something greater than survival. They had chosen to fight for the right to be free, and they would not let that right be taken from them, no matter the cost. As Earth's influence began to spread across the galaxy, the Galactic Council took notice, and their response was swift and decisive. They had underestimated Earth's potential, and now they faced the growing threat of a planet that refused to follow their rules. The Council called upon its most formidable fleets, sending them toward Earth. In a show of force, they believed that the rebellion could be crushed quickly and decisively, but Earth had already proven that it was more than capable of defending itself. The human fleet, now numbered in the hundreds of ships, each one better armed, faster, and more coordinated than before. Earth's ships had undergone extensive upgrades since the first battle. New engines had been installed, and powerful weapon systems had been integrated into the hulls of the warships. The fleet was no longer an untested ragtag force, but a formidable military machine capable of taking on the full might of the Council's forces. Earth was ready for whatever the Council had in store for them. The moment the first wave of Council ships appeared on Earth's radar, the atmosphere on the planet shifted. An air of determination and defiance took hold of the people as they prepared for another fight. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Earth would not be enslaved, it would not be silenced. Earth's leaders made their strategy clear. They would defend their planet, and they would defend it with everything they had. But they also understood that they could not win this war alone. To truly defeat the Council and secure their freedom, Earth would need to unite other worlds under their banner. The first step was to strike at the heart of the Council's forces. Before they could launch a full-scale invasion, Earth's military command knew that the Council's primary fleet was heading toward Earth's orbit with reinforcements in tow. If Earth could destroy or disable that fleet before it reached the planet, it could change the tide of the war and force the Council to reconsider their approach. The attack began with a bold strike into the heart of the Council's fleet. Earth's ships moved fast and hard, cutting through enemy lines with precision and deadly force. Vega's tactics were unorthodox and unpredictable, which caught the Council's commanders off guard. Each move was designed to keep the enemy guessing, forcing them into a defensive posture. They had no answer, for the battle was unlike any the galaxy had seen before. It was a brutal contest of wills, a fight where Earth's raw determination clashed with the Council's overwhelming power. The Council's ships were larger, more heavily armed, but Earth's fleet was faster and more agile. The humans used their knowledge of the terrain, their familiarity with Earth's systems, and their newfound weapons to their advantage. They launched waves of attacks designed to overwhelm the Council's advanced shields, targeting weak points and exploiting gaps in their defenses. Earth's ships surged through the chaos, striking down one enemy vessel after another. The Council's forces were stunned. They had expected to wipe out the human fleet with ease. Instead, they were being outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and defeated at every turn. Earth's victory in this battle would send shockwaves through the galaxy. It was a statement that Earth was not just a force to be reckoned with, but a new power on the galactic stage. As Earth's ships disabled the final Council flagship, the rest of their forces began to retreat. The galaxy watched as Earth's fleet emerged victorious. The Council had suffered a crushing defeat, and their plans for Earth's subjugation had been shattered. But the war was far from over. Earth's victory was hard won, but it had opened the door to a new future for the galaxy. Earth was no longer just a world on the edge of destruction. It was the heart of a new movement, a movement that would challenge the very foundations of the galaxy's established order. The victory above Earth was a turning point, but the real war had only just begun. Earth's newfound confidence echoed throughout the galaxy as the remnants of the Council's forces limped back to their homeworlds, broken and demoralized. But the Council was far from defeated, and Earth's leaders knew this moment of triumph would be fleeting. Earth's fleets had proven their might, but their resources were still limited. They could not continue to fight the galaxy's most powerful force forever. Without support, Earth turned its attention to the stars beyond its own planet, knowing that the key to survival lay in forging alliances with other systems that had suffered under the Council's rule. Earth had shown it could fight and win, but now it had to prove it could lead the galaxy to freedom. Earth's diplomatic efforts were slow but deliberate. They reached out to systems near and far, offering them a choice: join Earth and stand together against the Council, or remain under the oppressive rule of an ancient regime. Earth had no intention of simply surviving in the galaxy. It would shape it to be a place where no species had to bow to the will of the Council. Earth's message resonated with many alien civilizations oppressed for centuries by the Council's iron grip, worlds that had long yearned for independence. Saw in Earth a new hope. They had watched the human victory unfold with awe and disbelief. Now they saw an opportunity to rise up and claim their freedom. Earth's leaders knew that their task was not just about military victories. It was about creating a new order, one that was built on mutual respect between free species. Earth was no longer an isolated planet. It was the centerpiece of a movement that sought to tear down the old systems of power and replace them with something new, a system where freedom and equality could flourish. Throughout the galaxy, Earth's diplomats traveled to distant worlds, making promises of protection, technological exchange, and most importantly, the guarantee of freedom. They spoke of a galaxy where no species would be forced into submission by a distant and uncaring council. They spoke of a future where the voices of every species would be heard and respected. Earth's leaders offered not just military might, but a vision for a new future, one built on collaboration and mutual respect. The message was powerful, and it spread like wildfire. More and more systems rallied to Earth's banner, forming a coalition of free worlds that stood as a beacon of hope to all who had been oppressed. The coalition of free worlds was born, and it was a force that would rival the Council itself. But Earth's rise was not without its challenges. Despite the growing support from other species, the Council still held vast power. It controlled many of the galaxy's key trade routes and had powerful allies who remained loyal to its cause. The Council was not ready to give up its dominance so easily. Its leaders met in secret, strategizing how they could crush the growing resistance. They understood that Earth had become the heart of a revolution, a symbol of defiance that could not be ignored. But the Council underestimated the resolve of Earth's leaders and the strength of the coalition. The battle for the future of the galaxy had only just begun. Earth had proven it could win on the battlefield, but it was now about winning the hearts and minds of the galaxy's inhabitants. It would take more than military power to overthrow the Council. It would take unity, it would take strategy, and it would take every ounce of humanity's relentless drive to change the galaxy forever. The stakes had never been higher as Earth and its new allies prepared for the next phase of the war against a Council that would stop at nothing to reclaim its former dominance. But the galaxy was shifting, and Earth was leading the charge toward a new era. The coalition of free worlds was growing stronger with each passing day, but the Council had not been idle. In the aftermath of its defeats, the remnants of its once vast fleet were being reforged in secret, and its leaders were pulling in every resource at their disposal to squash the rising rebellion. They knew that if they allowed Earth and its allies to gain more ground, the entire galaxy would fall out of their control. And so the Council gathered its most powerful warlords and strategists to form a plan to break the coalition once and for all. Earth had not just challenged the Council's power, it had shattered the illusion of its invincibility. And that was a blow they could not afford to let go unpunished. The Council's retaliation came in the form of a massive invasion force dispatched to strike at the heart of the coalition's newly established territories. Their plan was simple: overwhelm the growing coalition with superior numbers and firepower. The target was clear: Earth and its allies had managed to carve out a safe zone in the galaxy, and the Council's goal was to crush this hope before it could spread further. Earth's intelligence network picked up on the Council's movements just in time, and the coalition began to mobilize for the defense of their newfound freedom. Earth's fleet stood ready once again, but this time they were not alone. They had the support of countless alien species who had come together under the banner of freedom and independence. Vega stood at the command center of Earth's fleet, watching the incoming forces on his display. His mind raced through the possibilities. He knew the battle ahead would be like nothing they had ever faced before. The sheer size and strength of the Council's forces were daunting, but Vega had learned something in the last war, something that had become Earth's greatest weapon: creativity, adaptability, and above all, unity. Earth and its allies might not have the numbers or the firepower of the Council, but they had something far more powerful: a shared belief in their right to be free. The plan was bold and risky, but it was the only chance they had. Earth's fleet would use the element of surprise to strike first. The coalition's forces would target the Council's weak points and exploit the gaps in their defenses. Earth's fleet had become a master of guerrilla tactics and fast strikes. They would hit hard and fast and keep the enemy off balance, never giving them time to regroup. Earth's warships were outfitted with new technology that allowed them to cloak for short periods of time, using the chaotic nature of the battle to slip behind enemy lines and strike at critical targets before vanishing again. Earth's strategy was built on disruption. The goal was to take out the Council's command ships and disrupt their communications, making it impossible for the invaders to coordinate their forces. The battle began in the darkness of deep space. The first wave of Earth's fleet surged forward with unprecedented speed. As the Council's ships tried to react, they found themselves immediately outmaneuvered by Earth's fleet, which moved like a swarm of hornets attacking from multiple directions. With pinpoint accuracy, Vega's command ship led the charge, weaving through enemy fire and striking at vulnerable targets, while the rest of Earth's fleet hit key positions across the battlefield. The Council's response was swift and brutal. Their ships fired massive beams of energy that lit up the sky in brilliant explosions, but Earth's tactics had already put them on the back foot. The Coalition ships darted in and out of the fight, hitting and running, forcing the Council into a defensive posture that they were not prepared for. Every time the Council thought they had Earth's ships in their sights, they vanished into the darkness, only to reappear elsewhere, striking at their flank. The Council was being overwhelmed by the sheer unpredictability of the battle. They had underestimated Earth's ability to turn the tide, and the fight for the galaxy was once again in the balance. As the battle raged on, Vega's heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was their moment. This was the time to end the Council's reign once and for all. And with the full might of the Coalition behind them, they were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for a galaxy that would no longer live under the shadow of tyranny. The Council had thrown everything it had at Earth and its allies, but they were fighting something the Council had forgotten: how to fight hope. The battle reached its fever pitch as the Coalition forces pressed the advantage with relentless fury. Vega's ships continued to dart through the chaos, executing strikes with surgical precision. Their targets were the heart of the Council's fleet, their command ships and communication hubs, the lifeblood of their coordination. Without it, the Council would be lost in the dark, and the Coalition would have a chance to finally bring an end to their tyranny. Earth's fleet cut through the enemy lines with devastating efficiency, but the Council was not ready to admit defeat. Their retaliatory strikes were fierce and unyielding. Massive beams of energy lanced through space, targeting Coalition ships, but Earth's warships had become masters of evasion. They slid between blasts, using their cloaking technology to avoid deadly hits and reappearing just in time to strike at another weak point. Vega's flagship led the charge, heading directly for the Council's command ship, the largest vessel in their fleet, a hulking monster of steel and fire. The Council had placed their hope in this vessel, thinking it would turn the tide, but they underestimated the ferocity of Earth's will. Vega knew this was the moment that would decide everything. If they could disable the command ship, the rest of the Council's fleet would scatter in disarray. This would be their chance to strike the final blow. The path to the command ship was littered with debris from destroyed Council vessels, and the atmosphere in the control room was thick with tension. The crew around Vega moved like a well-oiled machine, reacting to each shift in the battlefield without hesitation. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to change the future of the galaxy. Earth's ships fired their final salvo as they closed in on the massive command ship. Explosions rocked the dark void as several of the Council's smaller ships fell in the wake of the attack. But the path was still clear. Vega's ship charged forward with a deadly intent, closing in on their target. The Council retaliated with everything they had, but it was too late. Earth's fleet had already breached their perimeter. The flagship's weapon systems glowed with deadly light as it fired on the command ship, targeting its vulnerable points with calculated precision. The Council's defenses buckled under the weight of the onslaught. Vega's ship delivered a final blow to the command ship's central core, causing a massive explosion that shook the stars themselves. The command ship's destruction sent shockwaves through the Council's fleet, leaving them in disarray. The once unified fleet was now a collection of ships, floundering without direction. The rest of the Coalition forces moved in for the kill as the Council's ships began to retreat in chaos. Earth's ships pursued with unrelenting force, and one by one the remaining Council vessels were disabled or destroyed. The battle was over. The Council's last hope was shattered. Earth had won not just a battle but a war. Their victory reverberated across the galaxy as the Council's reign of terror came to a crashing halt. The Coalition of Free Worlds had proven that no empire, no matter how vast, could withstand the power of a united people. Earth had become the catalyst for change across the galaxy. Civilizations that had once been subjugated began to rise up with newfound hope. They saw the collapse of the Council not as an end, But as the beginning of a new era, the galaxy was no longer divided by the tyranny of the Council, but united by the ideals of freedom and self-determination. Earth had become the heart of this new galaxy, and its people had earned their place among the stars. Humanity had proven that it was no longer the weak underdog of the galaxy. It was a force in its own right. And with the dawn of a new age of peace and unity, Earth stood at the forefront, ready to lead a galaxy built on the principles of liberty and justice, for all the future was now theirs to shape.